when somebody's going through a challenging stage in their life, how do they find the light to go through that tunnel and eventually find their way out?
Well, for me, it begins with imagination. And here's what I mean by that. During the darkest period of my life, I was living in my car and I would sleep in the back seat. And on the back where I would sleep, I had these sticky notes. And I would stick, as you mentioned earlier, things I was grateful for on the back seat. And no matter how difficult things were, I would always find something to be grateful for. And I remember sticking on the back of the seat one day. It happened to be raining. And I remember sticking on the back seat is, I'm glad I have this car to be in because I'm not in the rain. But what I mean by imagination is, even during those periods, I started imagining myself getting out of the situation I was in. And so we've all heard about creating vision boards and so forth and so on. But that what that does is
Sure.
activates our imagination. And I believe imagination is simply the imaging in of God's divine ideas. And when we tap into our essence and we start imagining, we start listening to and paying attention to that still small voice within us, it will guide us to next steps. And so, but it begins in our imagination, us being willing to see in our own mind's eye that which we want to create in our lives. And that's where it all begins. So I had to
And,
start seeing myself in that position.
and I know that scientists have been able to evaluate things like how the imagination affects our physicality similarly to the way actually doing something is. So it's kind of like our body, mind, spirit doesn't know the difference between what's going on in our imagination and what's going on in our reality. They did that with, people practicing shooting hoops, and they found that those who imagine themselves getting good at it and not practicing were as good as those who went and physically practiced at the end of the study. So when we say imagination, I mean, it sounds kind of like ethereal, and yet there's science that backs up that this can be very effective.
Absolutely. And again, everything begins with thought. And so if I can't imagine myself getting out of a situation, I'll never get out of it. So I have to begin imagining myself what it's going to be like. But here's the key. Once you have the vision, if you will, then it's about taking an emotion and elevating that emotion to bring that image to light. So for example, when I was sitting in the back of my car with nothing, I was imagining myself in this multi-million-dollar mansion, right? So I'm imagining myself coming out of the situation, and I'm imagining myself in this mansion. And I would sit there and I would just, and I could see in my mind's eye this amazing mansion that I would be living in. Well, the feeling that came from that, okay, the more I put myself into that feeling space as if it had already happened, then that begins activating the universe. And the universe starts going, okay, I get it. That's what you want to create. So here, let's start moving you in that direction. And so having that picture first and then attaching an elevated emotion to it, eventually, as long as you move toward it, you can create it.